In this video, we will discuss an overview of Civil 3D points. Civil 3D points can be used to develop surfaces, alignments, coordinate geometry, and other types of design data in Civil 3D. Each point is uniquely numbered and has properties such as northing, easting elevation, and description. In addition to these properties, a point, as with all Civil 3D objects, must have a point style and a label style associated to it that control the point's layer, appearance, and annotation. Points, of course, can be either imported or created in Civil 3D manually. If we zoom in here and hover over the point, you'll notice a nice little tooltip that appears that tells you that point's number, the style it's using, the layer it's on, and so on. Points live in the Prospector tab in the Points category. As you can see in the preview pane, you can access all the points right here as well. As with everything in Civil 3D, there are styles and settings you need to be aware of to make sure the objects come into your drawing correctly. We have a point category, and as you can see here, we have a point styles category that defines the actual layer, block, and symbol that should be used for the point style. So for instance, if we go ahead and open up this tree coniferous point style, you'll see that it's telling Civil 3D what block to use in this section here, what to do with the 3D geometry, and what layer each of the different parts of the point should go on in the plan, model, profile, and section view. And of course, what visibility state they should have. You of course have label styles that control what types of labels should be applied to your Civil 3D point as well. Don't forget that there are also feature and command settings unique to the actual objects themselves. If you right-click on point and go to Edit Feature Settings, you'll see that there are some default styles, a default name format, and what to do with points as far as updating them. And of course, you have command settings. So for any of the commands used to create points, if you want to actually control the default settings when you create the actual point, such as what layer to use and how you want to be prompted, this is where you would actually define those settings. Description keys are used to map different point properties and settings based on a point's raw description. You can access the description keys in the Settings tab, Point category, and then you have the Description Key Sets category. In this drawing, there's already one here called Civil 3D Class. Let's go ahead and right-click on it and choose Edit Keys, and notice how it appears in the panorama window. Let's turn Auto Hide off for a second, and we'll go ahead and review the different columns that you can edit within the description key set. First off, we have the code column. Of course, the code column is the actual raw code being used by surveyors to actually describe the point that they may be locating on the ground. We have the style column, which is used to map the actual code to what style you want to use. Notice that there's an option when you click on this to actually set this to default. If you set this to default, what this will use is the active style defined in the current point group that's at the top of the list. We'll discuss point groups later on. You can also define a point label style to specifically lock in to the raw code. The format column is used to actually define your description. What's really cool about this is that you can actually control how your descriptions get defined using and leveraging data that may be stored in the actual raw description. Let's back up to the code column for a second. Notice that the majority of these have an asterisk at the end of it. What that tells Civil 3D, grab everything after the raw code and allow it to come into Civil 3D to eventually be used possibly in the description. Notice how we have this one here called conif, and inside the format column, it says $1 inch mark conif. The $1 is the first parameter after the raw code to grab. So maybe the surveyor located the tree and put the actual size of the tree in there. Civil 3D will grab that and put it into the description automatically. Pretty cool. Let's create a new one and see what else you can do with that. I'll go ahead and right click anywhere over here and we can either copy or we can just say new. We'll go ahead and say new. And when we scroll down here, you'll notice that it puts it at the end. We want to create a description key for combination poles. The description code, COMB, and again, let's put the asterisk afterwards so that Civil 3D will grab everything after that. Note that you can sort these columns, and notice we have column asterisk there. Let's go ahead and find a default style to use. So we'll go ahead and pick a utility pole style. Click OK. And now let's go ahead and set the format to actually leverage the pole number that the server has possibly picked up. So first we'll just do combo pole, and we'll say number parentheses $1. If they maybe added another one, you could actually put in here $2 and so on. For now, we'll just go with $1 and press enter. What layer should this go on? We'll go ahead and click on this one here and click over here. Note that if you do not define the layer for this to go on, Civil 3D will use the style, which is okay, except for the fact that what makes this functionality really very nice is the fact that you can actually use layer freeze command to freeze individual layers. Let's keep moving along here. We have the scale parameter, which actually allows you to scale the actual point based upon the actual parameter. Now with this one, I do not want to do that. So this would actually take that number and scale this block. That could be any number. However, with the tree, maybe we do. Maybe we want the trees to look a little larger and smaller based upon their actual size. The other columns here are basically how to apply different scale factors as well as a rotation parameter as well that you may want to use leveraging the actual setting defined after the raw code. Let's go ahead and view this actually working. I'll go ahead and just turn auto hide off for a second. Let's zoom into the circle here. So notice how we already have some combo poles, and we didn't have a raw code beforehand. Notice how it just came in by itself. To update the points within your drawing, I'll go ahead and right-click on the point groups, which again we will discuss later on, and choose Apply Description Keys and watch what happens. It will apply that description key and automatically update the object with the style defined by the description key code as well as the description itself. Really cool stuff. Now, if we use the layer freeze command, you'll notice here I can actually freeze these individual layers because they are on their own unique layers. Again, very nice functionality. Point file formats control how columns in a point file will be mapped when importing the file into the drawing. They are located in the Settings tab, in the Point category, and here we have point file formats. Let's go ahead and look at an existing point file format. Note, to create a new one, you can simply right-click on here and click on New. Let's look at the standard PNEZD comment limited. We'll go ahead and double-click it. This will open up the point file format column. First off, you can change the actual default extension. So for instance, if you're using a lot of CSV files instead of TXT files, you can change that as well. You can also do coordinate zone transformation, which will basically transform the coordinates to the current file's coordinate system if you have one defined. To change any of the columns, simply click on the column header, and of course, you have the standard different column names that you can map to your point file, depending on what you have for a point file format. If you'd like to actually load in a file, you can click on the Load option here and navigate to a point file, and then click Parse, and it'll actually bring them in, and it'll tell you what's happening with each of the columns here. You have some additional options available as far as what's delimited by, read no more than, and sample every specific set of points based upon the value defined in here. Civil 3D enables you to import many types of files based on various point file formats. As we discussed earlier, you can create point file formats to accommodate necessary formats that you may have. Let's also remember that in the Settings tab, we have the description key that will be used to import the points correctly and map them to the correct point styles. We also have the point styles that define what they should be set to, the label styles for any labeling, and don't forget about the default command settings defined here as well. To import points, navigate to the Insert tab, Points from File command on the Import panel. First, let's go ahead and select the file, and we'll select the points-eg.csv file and click Open. One thing to mention is you can select multiple files in there if you want to. By selecting the correct point file format, Civil 3D will put this check mark here telling you that it's matching the selected point file format. Note that you can add them to a point group, which is really nice if you want to actually be able to segregate them in some sort of way. And you can even do elevation adjustments if possible, as well as coordinate transformation. Let's go ahead and click OK here. We'll do a zoom extents, and there are our points. Notice how some of them already got mapped properly, and they're even using the different layers. Let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit, and let's zoom into our combination poles here. So we've got the combination poles, however, the problem is our label styles are not appearing. So what's going on? Remember, in the panorama window, I have the description keys already defined. Again, go to the Settings tab, Description Key Set, right-click, and choose Edit to get there. But if we look at the point label style, it's using the default label style for the majority of the points based upon their raw code. Again, this is telling Civil 3D use the point group label style that has the priority at the top of the list. We'll go over point groups later on, but for now, let's just navigate to the Prospector tab, expand point groups, and just right-click on here and click Update. Notice how now it updates that to use this point group which is in the top of the list. If we right-click on here and choose Properties, you'll notice how this is the label style being used. If we change this to Description Only, that will update all the points to use just that description. Pretty cool, and a very nice way to control all of the points in your drawing. Civil 3D provides great reviewing capabilities for point data. To review point data, you can use the panorama window, the review pane in the tool space, or the properties palette. Let's go ahead and look at this. First, let's look at the tool space. By simply clicking the points category, you can actually review all the points in your drawing. Each one of these columns is completely sortable, and you can even look at bogus elevations that may have been incorporated into your survey file accidentally and sort by that column. If you scroll to the right, you'll see all the different descriptions, the styles being used, and so on. If you want to select specific Civil 3D points that you want to edit, you can select them, and then in the ribbon, click on Edit List Points. Again, this will open up in the panorama window, and now you can edit any of the point properties defined here. Note, to make any kind of global edits, if I hold the Shift key down, you can select multiple rows. One of the things too to mention, if you want to globally change all the different settings or styles defined by these points, you cannot click once in here, as this will only select the current row that you pick. To do so in a global way, and this is standard for all Civil 3D objects in this type of interface, simply select all the objects you want to change, right-click on the actual header, and then choose Edit, and now you can change the setting that you want to change just for the points that you had selected. Pretty cool. When you're done with that, simply click the check mark to get rid of that vista in the panorama window. You can also, of course, use the Properties palette to simply select an object, navigate to the Properties palette, and you can change pretty much any of the properties here as well. The Create Points functionality in Civil 3D provides many methods that you can use to create points. The dialog box is segregated into tool categories for easier access. You can access either the dialog box or a drop-down in the Home tab, Create Ground Data panel, and then we have the Points drop-down right here. If you click on the Point Creation tools, this contains all of the different categories right here. We have Miscellaneous, Intersections, Alignments, Surface, Slope, and Interpolate, as well as some other miscellaneous tools. However, if you click on the Point Creation tools, which you should do, this will open the Create Points dialog, because you want to be able to click on this drop-down here to control the different settings and parameters necessary when creating points. For instance, the default layer, or when you create points, what prompts you might want, as well as what the actual next point number is and how to create new points based upon the next point. Let's go ahead and leave the point number set to 5,000, and we'll just click on that to minimize it. And let's just create a basic NEZD point. Let's go ahead and zoom in where we're going to create the point. A circle has been created for you. And let's say we have a tree that the surveyors forgot to pick up, but they have it included in the fieldbook file. So this will just be a miscellaneous point. Let's go ahead and click on the miscellaneous dropdown here and click on Manual. As I always say, when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window. It says, please specify location for the new point. So we could just type in the X and Y if we wanted to. However, let's go ahead and use the transparent command 'NE for northing easting, because that's what we have. For the northing, you want to type in 901.350.3916 and press enter. For the easting, we want 145 6095.4408 and press enter. Notice the command line window asks us for a description. This will be a DECID6. So DECID, that's the raw code that will be mapped to our description key set. And then if we type 6 here, because we're using that parameter 1 that we discussed in the description keys video, you'll see here that automatically it'll actually add the symbol and scale the block based upon the parameter. The elevation we have here is 97.32. Press enter. And as you can see, the block comes in differently and it has the description necessary. Pretty cool. Now notice how we're still in the transparent command. So we could keep adding additional points if we wanted to. However, we are done. So press escape once. That gets you out of the transparent command, back into the command you had started beforehand. Now we're done. So just press escape and that ends the command completely. Now let's look at another example. Let's zoom out a little bit and zoom into this location here where we have this circle for you defined. And let's say the surveyors were done for the day and they forgot to locate a hydrant. We don't really need the elevation, but we do want to locate the hydrant so we can see it on our plans, right? So in this case, what they did was they taped off a distance from the corner of this building here. So what we can do is actually use one of the intersection commands to generate this point based upon those two distances. In this case, it's a distance operation, but notice the option to do many of the different intersection types. So let's click on distance, and it says, please specify a location for the radial point. Now I could use the transparent command to locate this point here. However, I can also simply just use the node snap to actually snap to the point itself. So let's go ahead and just snap over here for the point number 1. And the distance the surveyors taped off of this one is 8.9. And then press enter. And the next one they selected was 439. And the distance for this one is 7.6. Now watch what happens when we do this. Notice how you get two X's, two large X's. This is because Civil 3D has generated two circles, and this is the location for the intersection of those two circles, which of course would get you the distance point. Now if you want all the points to be created, you could click all right here. But we only want the one point, which is this one here. Of course, it's not inside the building, it's over here. So what we can simply do is click near the actual location. You don't have to actually snap to anything, just simply click here. It automatically will grab that point. Now for the description, we want existing hydrant. This is EHYD. Press enter. We have no elevation. We don't really need it. This is just simply a graphical block. Press enter and press enter again, and then escape. And now we have our hydrant in there with the next point number, which is 5001. As you can see, there are many ways that you can create points using the Create Points tools. Point groups are simply a filter of points that share common characteristics. Some example uses of point groups are to perform specific tasks, such as creating break lines that will eventually be used to create a surface, override a set of points default layers or point style or label style, or maybe you just want to create a point group that contains ground points, allowing it easier to create your surface and manage the points used to create that surface. Point groups are stored in the Prospector tab in the Point Groups collection here. You'll notice here that when a point group is out of date, it'll actually warn you with this symbol, telling you that points have been added into the drawing that match the criteria defined in this point group. To update point groups, you simply right-click on them. If you want to update all of them, you can simply right-click up here and choose Update, and now those points have been added to that point group. Let's go ahead and edit this one just to see what it looks like. We'll right-click on it and choose Properties. As you can see, you define point groups based upon different criteria. You can use point groups, raw descriptions, you can actually type them in or select them from the drawing. You can then exclude points. We'll skip over the query builder as this is what's shown after these two have been edited. And then you can override points based upon the properties defined here. The point list simply lists the points in this point group. Let's create two point groups in this drawing because let's say we are ready to plot our points, the points that we want to plot, and we want to create point groups to actually leverage that. Let's go ahead and right-click on here and choose New. And the first one that we'll create is one called _no_display. And this will be basically used as a point group to include all the points, and then we will eventually override them with a no display property. So what we'll do is we'll click on the Include tab and toggle on Include All Points. Then we'll navigate to the Overrides tab Toggle on both the style and the label style and make sure that they are set to none. Click OK. As you can see, they all just disappear. So point groups have a priority. This allows you to prioritize what points you'll see and what label or point styles they will use. So now we want to create a point group just for plotting. We'll go ahead and right click on here and choose New. And we'll call this one for plotting. We'll use the default style of Xmark and a default label style of description only. This will only be used if the description key set does not override and is set to default. If they are being overridden by the description key set, the points themselves will use those point styles and label styles. So let's go ahead and click on Raw Description Matching. And what we're going to do here is simply add in the points that we want to plot. So we're going to have combo poles that will plot, the trees, a drill hole. We'll skip over the rest of these here. We'll do existing hydrant, electric pole, and electric manhole. Let's say we want the guy wire to also be plotted. Maybe any horizontal vertical controls, any signage, sewer and storm manholes, and that'll do it. Then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and click on the Overrides tab. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we only override the point label style with the description only. We don't want to override the symbol with an X mark. We want the symbol, which is probably being defined by the description key, to actually show the real symbol of that point. Let's click OK. And as you can see, very easily and simply, we now have points that we want to use just for plotting. This is a quick and really easy way to simply generate the points that you want to plot with and their description as well. Really, really cool stuff and a huge time saver. Civil 3D provides many methods to manipulating your points once they're in your drawing. You can use grips as well as the point editor. If we go ahead and zoom into a point, and we go ahead and select it, you can right-click and choose Edit Points, and this will actually open it up in the Point Editor Vista. You can change the northing, you can change the easting, elevation, etc. And of course, it will update the object automatically. Now, if we look at the grips here, you'll notice that you can physically move the point. If you hover over the grip and click Move Point, it will actually move it. Now, this, of course, is probably not what you want to be able to do. So, what you can do is, of course, lock your points. A really quick and easy way to lock all your points is to expand your point groups to all points, right-click, and choose Lock Points. That will lock all your points. You'll get a little symbol next to each point that tells it it's locked. And now when you go ahead and select your point, you'll notice that, of course, you cannot move it. You can, of course, still drag the labels if you want to. You can move it. You can rotate it. You can toggle the sub-item grips if it happens to be sub-components in here. So if I wanted to drag this point out, let's say I could do so very easily. You can also rotate points. So let's say, for an example, you have a hydrant of some sort, and you actually want to rotate this point. You can simply hover over the grip, click on Rotate Marker, and now very quickly and easily, you can rotate the marker, and you can even type an angle in if you want to. Now, let's look at our layout and see what possible problem may occur here. Let's go ahead and go to this 11 by 17 layout. And if we look, our view is rotated, and if we notice, the labels themselves are also rotated. So how do we solve that? Do I have to rotate every single one of these labels? Well, firstly, actually, let's zoom in here and notice that this point with this description is actually taking on the view's rotation. That's pretty cool. That would avoid you having to rotate every single label style to match the view's orientation. Let's see what's going on here. Firstly, let's set our point group priority to only show the points that we want to plot. We'll put the no display at the top, and then the for plotting at the top. Click OK. Simply do a regen all, REA. And now, as you can see, we're actually done. That's really cool. I mean, very simply, that label style actually has that defined. So let's go ahead and look at that setting. So how do you find a point label style? Or for that matter, any label style? Again, navigate to the Settings tab. Look at the category of object that you want to actually edit. We're in the point category. We're going to look for label styles. And let's look at the description only and examine why this one actually rotates to the view. We'll go ahead and double click it. And if we go to the General tab, there's a property called Behavior. If you look over here, you can set it to the view or the object. The other point label styles were set to the object, so they took on the object's rotation. They stay that way until you rotate it yourself. The view will take on the view's rotation, which again is just a really cool way to automate this functionality. Civil 3D has a few ways that you can report on points. Firstly, as we have discussed in the past, you can actually use the panorama window to select points, right-click, and then choose Edit Points. Any of the things that you see here, you can actually copy and paste to Excel. This is a common practice for all tabular type vistas. You simply right-click, choose Copy to Clipboard, and then in Excel, you can do a Control-V, and that pastes it in there. You can also look at your point groups and look at the pane down below here as well. One of the other really cool features is you can actually right-click on the point group and choose Export Points and use one of the point file formats to actually get out a point file that is comma or space separated. The Toolbox tab on the tool space is also where you do all your reporting. If you look here, we have a points category, and you can do a point list as well as radial stakeout. Let's look at this report type right here. This is the station offset to points. If you double click it, a dialog box will appear, allowing you to take an existing centerline, and then using points, you can actually report on those points based upon station offsets of the centerline. We'll go ahead and click Create Report, and then in your default browser, Civil 3D will show you the station offset and elevation for those points.